Okay, fantastic. I think we're officially ready to get started. So thanks guys for coming to the networking session. It's awesome to see so many faces and names again. I know everyone's like so swamped right now, especially those libraries that are launching their curbside pickup, like Zion, who started literally 3 minutes ago. um, so, I'm hoping we can be somewhat efficient today so we can get everyone back to their normal business. So I'm going to share my screen so we can all see oh, come on, where is it? There we go. The agenda up here and follow along. So the first thing, Deborah and I just wanted to take a few minutes for some updates. We got questions about the Rails delivery update and the Realm study update. So we're going to start with a Rails delivery update. So it probably isn't going to be any new information. If you were at the that Rails member update they did last week, I think it was last Thursday, will be kind of the same information, but just to kind of review what's happening with Rails here. Rails will, they've got 2 upcoming pickup and drop off dates in the next couple weeks. So these 2 rounds will be to help sorting facilities in the libraries kind of clean up what they've been holding on to during this extended closed period. So the first one is going to happen June 18th. So at that time, Rails is going to drop off your items that have been held onto in the sorting facility and grab bins that were never picked up because of the stay-at-home order. So what libraries can do in preparation for this. For any of those bins that will be picked up by Rails, go ahead and pull any of your items from the bins. So these are items that were going to be sent out as outgoing holds. You can check them in, do not set them in transit, but please do make sure you reactivate the patron's hold when prompted. This will just save Rails, just a couple extra items that they need to sort through. If you're not able to get them and don't pull them, it's not going to hurt anything. The items they're just basically just going to come right back to you. The second round of the drop-off will be June 25th. So we had a lot of questions about quarantine. Anything picked up by Rails is expected to have already been quarantined. One of the things we're hoping to get from Rails is a clearer definition of what quarantine means. So what we're hoping to have over the next couple days is just an FAQ, just kind of clarifying some questions, some pending questions, and also a flow chart that will help address these quarantine situations. For now, we are interpreting that the quarantine period is to mean the time after patrons return the materials. So anything that's going to be picked up by Rails should have been quarantined for 7 days after the patron returned them to the library. This interpretation assumes that library staff are wearing PPE when handling materials and putting them into bins post-quarantine. And please, please, please keep in mind this interpretation may change as we receive more information from Rails. So this is what we understand at this moment. This could change, like if that Rails quarantine flowchart and FAQ come out in a couple hours, this could change in a couple hours. During the Rails member update, there were also questions on quarantining materials being dropped off by Rails. CCS is not issuing a requirement at this time to libraries on if they should quarantine incoming Rails delivery. So we're encouraging libraries to think about safety when you make that decision internally. But right now, we aren't going to have a system-wide requirement. So that's what we kind of know at this time. Again, at that Rails member update, they said they were going to put together the any pending questions into an FAQ and create that quarantine scenario flowchart. We will share any information that we get from Rails, and of course, any updates that they have are also posted to the Rails COVID-19 information page.
Hi, Mieko, can I jump in super quick?
Yeah, please.
So I actually just received a draft of the FAQ from Rails to review. So it's not official yet. It's still a working document. But there were two things that I saw right away that I wanted to make sure that we clarified. One is that previously CCS has told our members that you don't need to relabel the stuff in your bins, like Rails will just handle it, but that is not true. Rails is asking that you relabel the outgoing material in your bins before June 18th to be routed to the home library in this new FAQ. They have already relabeled the items that they have at their sorting center. And then the other thing, and I'm not even done reading the document, but the other thing I wanted to point out is on June 25th, Rails will deliver to all libraries they have materials for, but they will only collect materials from the libraries who have opted in for delivery after that. So if CCS libraries aren't restarting delivery at that time, which we'll know after governing board's meeting tomorrow, you won't have to put your bins out. You'll just be receiving bins for that second day. And the FAQ does confirm what you said, Mieko, that if your staff are using proper PPE and hand washing and all of that, you don't need to like re-quarantine after your staff touch an item. So that confirms what Mieko just shared.
I have a comment if that's permissible.
Always, Jose.
Thank you. So if we have a bin full of items that are going to one library, can we just put a note in that bin, all Park Ridge or all Des Plaines or something to that effect, just to reduce the amount of labels we have to replace in all these bins?
At this time, we're not specifically sure, and Rebecca, maybe you have that answer in the FAQ you have access to. I would assume that that would be appropriate, but we might need to check in with Rails on that.
Yeah, I don't think that the FAQ covers that. I know that's not something they've wanted in the past, but things may be different in this go round. So I'll add that to, I'll ask them to answer that questions as well. It does say that you don't have to pre-sort your bins, but I understand that's not exactly what you're asking. If you're asking, Jose, if you have pre-sorted, can you just like label the bin as a whole and not have to like put a sticky on each item? So I will, I'll see if I can get an answer for that.
Yeah, it would just be for this first batch. The rest of them, we can start doing them individually.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So Rebecca will follow up on that. Does anyone else have any other questions? So I see a question in the chat from Lori. She is asking, are we labeling Rails materials or are we sending with no labels? Not 100% clear, Lori, what you mean by Rails materials.
I'm thinking it's anything outgoing. Is that?
So according to the, yes. So according to the FAQ that Rebecca has access to, which should be shared with libraries later this week, Rails is asking that you label outgoing items with the owning library. Perfect.
And there's a comment in the chat from Louise. I asked that question at the Rails meeting and they said we have to label everything. Yeah, hopefully we'll have an official draft of that FAQ that we can share out with, so it's in print somewhere too for everyone.
And as soon as we get a final version, we can go ahead and send it out to the CERC listserv so that you all have it, and the ILL list as well. So just to summarize what Mieko said, Rails is asking that libraries quarantine outgoing materials that will be picked up on June 18th for 7 days. So according to our math, that means that items that will be in the delivery bins for next Thursday's pickup should be quarantined starting after you close tomorrow. So anything that's returned after end of day tomorrow, Wednesday the 10th, those items won't be eligible to be picked up on June 18th.
And I think we had a question from Louise.
Yes, when exactly is Rails going to pick up our bins? Is that June 25th?
There will be a pickup on June 18th. They, at the member update, they said they weren't able to accurately provide like time estimates.
That's fine.
Okay, great.
But-
Yeah. So,
But when are they going to act, then the other side of that is when are they actually going to drop off materials so we can unpack those bins? Is that June 25th?
So on June 18th, Rails will pick up any bins that you have with outgoing materials that belong to other libraries. At the same time, they'll also drop off any items that they've been holding at their sorting facility since March.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, did that make sense?
Yes,
And then
our library is under the assumption that nothing's going to be dropped off, but I thought it was. Okay.
Yep, so they have, I think they said at the Rails update that they have about 44,000 items that they've been
Yeah.
holding at their sorting facility. So they'll divvy those up by library and then drop them off on the 18th, along with picking up any materials that you've been holding on to
Yeah.
and those bins. Then on the 25th, Rebecca clarified they will be dropping off material again, but only picking up bins for libraries that opt into delivery. So
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for clarifying.
Always, Louise. So governing board tomorrow at their special June meeting will be voting whether or not CCS libraries will resume delivery at the same time, or if CCS libraries will be able to opt into delivery one by one. So we don't know yet if libraries can opt in on June 29th, if all CCS libraries will opt in on June 29th, or if all CCS libraries will opt in at a later date to be determined by governing board. So they'll talk about that tomorrow at their meeting.
Deborah?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. For those of you, because I just checked my notes from the Rails meeting last week, if you are getting overnight delivery, that overnight is the 17th, not the 18th.
okay. So overnight 17th into 18th rather than 18th into 19th.
Yes.
Right, so make sure then you account for that in your 7-day quarantine period. And Molly, you also did note in the chat that most of your items have been sitting in quarantine since March, but some libraries have begun accepting returns from the public, so they may have additional materials that belong to other libraries that they'll be sorting into their bins for Rails pickup. So for those libraries who are currently accepting returns of materials, do make sure that items that will be picked up overnight the 17th into the 18th or on the 18th have been quarantined for at least 7 days.
One other thing to mention too, if your library has bins, like bins that were incoming with holds for your patrons, but you never got to them because your library closed so suddenly in March, feel free to trap those holds for your patrons instead of sending them directly back to the library. They're there for your patrons. Your patrons might as well get them and be able to use them. So if any library still has incoming bins that they have not processed, go ahead and trap those holds. Let's see. So I think the last thing I have related to delivery, Bob did run some numbers on items that are in transit for each library. This report was silence. This report was shared with directors in the governing board meeting packet. We'll send out the report to the CERC and ILO listservs after the session is done. But libraries can use this report to estimate how many items you can expect to see back between these two drop-off points. Keep in mind, though, the number may have grown now that libraries are checking in items and will be sending more things back on the 18th. So we will share that with the listservs, just so you can maybe have a rough idea of what's to come next week. So I think that is everything that we know relating to the Rails delivery. I'm sure we'll have more information very soon as Rails shares more. The second part of the update was on the Realm project, which is not exactly an update, I guess, but just kind of a summary of where they're at right now. So for those who may not be familiar, the Realm project is the study where they're testing how long COVID-19 lingers on various library materials. They now have a dedicated page for the study where they'll post updates and documents and where you can sign up for email alerts. So in addition to that report, I'll also send out the link for that page so your library can access it whenever you want to. Oh, thanks, and Deborah just chatted it out too. At this time, they've released their test plan and a preliminary literature review. So that is kind of where the Realm study is at. Again, we'll just keep watching for any results that they release. So I think that's what we have for updates. If there's any questions, go ahead and ask them now or pop them in the chat. Otherwise, oh, I heard a microphone.
Well, I will just say you can also sign up for email updates for the Project Realm study. I did that myself, so it's really handy if you want to stay in the know of what's happening, and if there are any progress, you might want to sign up for those email updates. And you can do that on the link that I chatted to everyone.
Okay. But with that, let's move on to the bulk of our agenda. So thank you to everyone who submitted agenda items and questions. There's, just like last time, just a lot of interest in Curbside and how libraries are setting it up. And now that we have some libraries who've actually started Curbside, I think there's a lot of interest to hear how that has been going. So one of the big groups of questions that we got in the submissions was just like asking what have you learned for the libraries who have already started pulling items and offering Curbside. So just a very general question for those who are already offering some kind of service, what has been working? What do you find you want to change? Any shucks, we missed that moment that you wish you did differently?
Hi, it's Anastasia from Park Ridge. Can you guys hear me?
We
We can
can.
hear you.
Great. So we have 1 week down. So our first week, we processed over 665 appointments and delivered 2,000 materials.
Wow.
So I would really suggest having appointments to control your workflow. I really feel really good about our procedure. You know, our staff has been, very happy with it. The one thing that I wasn't prepared for is, even though we have appointments, is some people weren't making them properly and finishing the steps. So they were showing up, oh, I have an appointment, but my bag's not out. So, day one, I probably had like 40 patrons show up who didn't have appointments, and it kind of caused a lot of face-to-face contact with patrons. So we decided to buy a Ring doorbell. So now if patrons have questions, they just ring the doorbell and we can talk to them through there. And then we can get their items and let them know, please stay 6 feet back and we'll put your items on the table. So, that's something I find very helpful. And especially we want to protect our staff and kind of keep them distance as much as possible, because patrons, some of them don't follow, social distancing guidelines. So that was something we learned.
And Anastasia, I have a question. Your tables are set up outside the building?
Yeah, they are. So we have like a canopy in front of the library. So we have like an L-shaped table. And then we just put like a tent over it, and it's been working out really nicely. People are, for the most part, picking up their bags. We only have like maybe 1 or 2 missed appointments per day. So yeah, it's been like going very smoothly. We're very happy with it. You know, patrons like that they can make their appointments. We like it because we can control our workflow. We love the Ring doorbell. We put everything in a paper bag and we use a self-check. So then I make sure I look at their number of holds ready for pickup and make sure that matches the number of items checked out, because that's another call we'll get. You know, people will call and say, oh, I just got a notice that more items are available. Do I have to make a second appointment? So that might be something you want to share, you know, with the public once you start sharing your procedures is, you know, we'll check and we'll add to your bag, you know, as we're processing materials. So we have our large meeting room set up to trap holds. And then as we're trapping holds, we bag them into paper bags, and the information on the bag matches our hold wrappers. So patrons are used to seeing that. And then in the beginning, we were putting them in alphabetical order on the tables, but it was kind of taking us a long time. So we ditched that, and people are still able to find their items really nicely. So we literally run out with 2 people, put out the appointments by the hour, and then we go back inside. So it's been working out really nicely for us.
That's good. I see a comment in the chat from Nina over at Carrie, who says that at Carrie, they've been checking things out to the patron at the time that they notify them that their items are ready for pickup. So Nina says that sometimes they pick up their items 7 days later and the DVDs or the items have already come due because of Carrie's loan periods. Luckily, they don't have overdue fees, so that is not a problem at this time. So Anastasia, I'm curious, you do not check out the items for the patrons until they've called to make an appointment?
Correct. No. So what we do is we'll run a list of appointments in the beginning of the day, and then we have a runner and a checker outer. So the runner will get the bags from the meeting room and bring them to the checker outer. And we don't even take them out of the bag. We just put the whole bag on the self-check and it checks out in one swoop. So that's really nice. I don't want to be putting items on people's accounts personally for us, you know, until we know they want the items and it's pretty close to them coming and getting them. And it really streamlines the workflow in the meeting room for when we're trapping holds and just putting them in bags.
And sorry, Anastasia, one other question. How many appointments do you offer per hour?
20.
20, okay.
And we're doing 6 hours a day. And this week has calmed down. We're not even fully booked. Like yesterday we had 83 appointments out of 120. We were limiting, the one other thing I did learn is in the beginning, I did want to limit people to 1 appointment in the first 2 weeks. But then if people were rescheduling, we would have to go in and cancel the appointments before we could reschedule them. So I just actually changed that and I put no limitations because I think it was kind of stressful on staff, you know, to try and manage that. So for the most part, I think people are being respectful, and, you know, I told them as long as you have items ready for pickup, you know, you can make your appointment.
That's good.
Becky has a follow-up question for you, Anastasia, and then we do have a couple other questions in the chat. For Anastasia, what are you using to schedule your appointments?
We're using LibCal Spaces.
Excellent. It seems Carrie has a different approach from Park Ridge. Carrie does not have appointments for patrons to come pick up their materials. Nina, I don't know if you're comfortable, but if you're willing to unmute yourself and share your experiences over at Carrie, I think that'd be really helpful for the group.
Hello, it's me.
Hi, Nina.
Hi. So we are just calling patrons. They're not getting notification or anything. We're just calling them and letting them know that their items are ready. We have scheduled curbside hours, and we tell them the curbside hours. We keep all the bags with everything that's already been checked out to the patron. And they just stand by their car and say their last name. We go and get the bag, we place it on the table outside, and then we step back, and then they take the bag. So it's been working real well. The most time consuming is calling everybody, especially at first, because everybody had a lot of questions and things. But yeah, I am curious as far as the checking things out. I don't know that we could feasibly work it so that, so I was just wondering if, you know, some kind of feedback on that. But so far, no one's really seemed to be too concerned that their, you know, items are due right away, since we tell them not to worry. But, so what kind of questions did you have?
Well, how many things were on your pick list then?
Oh, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. I think at first it was probably, you know, close to 600 or something, but it dropped way back. So now we're having pretty much a regular pick list. It was just bad for a day, and then it got pretty normal. So we're probably a little less busy than we thought we'd be, which is kind of disappointing. So we probably can reschedule, so maybe not so many people are taking that front line or whatever, because we had 3 people out there figuring we'd need that many people, and we really haven't. Like the first day we had, I think, 121 pickups, and then yesterday we had 65. So not as busy as we thought we'd be.
That's interesting.
So it looks like Des Plaines also does not have appointments for patron pickup, but they do have a drive up. Lori, I don't know if you're willing to share how your experiences have went with, again, not having appointments for patrons.
Hi, it's Lori from ELA.
Oh, wrong library.
Wrong
Hi, Lori
Lori.
from ELA.
Wrong, Lori. So this is only day 2 for us. So we don't have a whole lot of feedback. We had, we turned off all our hold notices. So we're calling all our patrons, and that's allowing us to control our workflow, at least at this point. We had 1,100 items on our pick list. So we're working through those right now. They're all processed right now. We're just making calls. And I am actually home today. The other Lori is at the office at the library. And she said they're running very, very steady today. So far it's worked out for us, although it is a lot of phone calls. I will say that it's a lot of phone calls.
And there's a question from Carrie. If anyone who is currently doing curbside, if you've turned on hold notifications or never turned them off, or is your library contacting patrons individually? So we've heard from a couple libraries who have been contacting patrons individually. If there's any libraries who are currently offering curbside and do use the automatic the Polaris notifications, if you have anything you want to share with that.
Hi, this is Chusi from Lake Forest. We've been doing curbside service for a week now. It's been going pretty smoothly. Tori would have probably be on the call. She'll be on the call in a little bit. But
there she is.
I see Tori.
Oh, okay. Tori, why don't you tell them?
Yeah, our first week was pretty crazy just because we had about a little over 700 on the list when we started. We got through it last week, so now we're down to more regular. We are sending out our notifications. Our notifications are going out with a tag on it saying we will call you when they're ready. We check it out, we trap it, we check it out to the patron, and then we put it out and we're handing them out off the dock in the back. And it's going pretty well, especially after the first 2 days, because of course all the lovers, the crazy lovers of books, were there first thing in the first thing. We're doing it from 2 to 6 Monday through Friday. We have had some people show up early, and we have run out and gotten them something and handed out their bag. But yeah, they pull up with their name in the window or a sign, and they've all been very good about writing their names down. And we grab their bag and pop it in their trunk or the back seat, whichever they prefer. And we've gotten through, I don't know, yesterday I think we did about 55 out the back. I mean, we're smaller area. We have a lot of people going on vacation. So we had it's the children's department where the holds pile up the most. It's bagging it and finding the best bag that seems to be the real key. And as far as organization, but yeah, we're doing it from 2 to 6 because we have to take all the bags back in. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way to do it in the mornings too. Some people can't come in the afternoon, but we're trying to make accommodations when that comes up. Most people seem to be able to manage between 2 and 6. But yes, we call every single hold to let them know that the item is ready, checked out to them, and at the back. And we hold them for 4 days. So we tell them 4 days. We tend to hold them an extra day or two until we're sure everybody understands the system. Otherwise, we're running them pretty much the same as before. So it's going okay for us so far.
Cool. Thanks, Tori.
And Laura from Algonquin also said that they've started Curbside and they've turned off hold notifications, so they're also calling each patron. Anastasia noted that they are using the Polaris notices to notify patrons that items are ready to pick up. And the only time that they've contacted patrons were those patrons who had holds that were on the hold shelf back in March when they closed due to the stay-at-home order. So for those, they called patrons who had holds with phone notifications. And then for patrons who had email notifications, they got all of those email addresses and emailed the patrons to let them know they still had materials back from March that were ready for pickup. So it looks like Anastasia, at Park Ridge, they used Library Aware and sent a bulk email. So that's a pretty handy and quick way to let your patrons know they have items. And Anastasia notes they had about 1,800 items on their pick list, but that has dropped down to 400 this week. So a big decrease after that initial rush of holds being placed. And Park Ridge's hours are Monday 12 to 6, Tuesday 2 to 8, Wednesday, Thursday 12 to 6 as well, Friday, Saturday 10:30 to 4:30. So a nice variation in the hours that pickup's available.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes,
yeah,
we love that.
Another thing, we were debating between curbside and then contact-free pickup. And I'm really happy that we changed our approach because it's a lot less work on the staff. Because now we just go out once per hour with 2 carts and we put our bags out versus having to run to each individual's car. And of course, every library has to do what's best for them. But just imagine once we start getting returns for some of the libraries, how much time that's going to save for our staff to be working on other things. So when I got home after our first day, I texted my staff and I said, thank God we didn't do curbside. So that's just, another perspective I want to share with the libraries that maybe haven't started or are still in their planning stages to consider.
That's very helpful to know. Are there, for the libraries who are doing some kind of service at this point, is there anything else that you want others to consider or the others should consider before starting the service? So a couple chats too before we get far away from this. Displanes says they have patrons come to their front door, so there's no actual carry out to the car. They are, sounds like they are willing to make exceptions if it comes to that. Jackie at Lake Villa says they aren't doing appointments. They are calling patrons to notify them of the hold, and then they call us when in the parking lot we take items out to the table. And they'll check the items out to the patron after the library calls them.
for those people that are calling, what if they get a voicemail, do they just leave a voicemail and then you are checking their items out to them?
At Lake Forest, yes, we go ahead and leave the voicemail indicating that the item has been checked out to them, is ready for pickup, that they have 4 days to pick it up. Patrons have called us and asked us to extend, like they can't come. We've extended it a few days. We have automatic renewal. We've released a lot of things that might not have gotten renewed before will now. So we're going to be generous with, we're fine free, so that helps us. But yeah, we do leave the message and go on and go ahead and put it out. We're having patrons, we tell them they can contact a librarian through our website if there are any issues. So if they have a problem, we've had many a patron where they don't want it or something, they'll contact the librarian, who then sends an email out to us so we can take it off the cart. But yeah, we are leaving a message and assuming that they're getting it. We're amazed at how we're getting where the voicemail is full.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, do you make a note that you didn't actually get a hold of a person, or you just leave it, you got a voicemail, that's it, and if they don't come?
Remembering to do it, some doesn't. If they don't come, we can replace the whole. We haven't been having a real problem with it. It was the first batch when we first got in and had to do over 700. That was the one where we didn't know how many of those people would show up because they may have changed their minds. We didn't have time to call all of them. We were calling if we got at the beginning, everybody was home. So we weren't getting a lot of machines. The staff's now praying for a machine because it goes much faster if we can leave. So we've gotten down to where our pull list is even less, a little less than we normally do, because we aren't having to pull for other libraries. So consequently, we're getting through to most. I haven't had a real problem with people we've left a tape message for.
So it looks like
Thank you.
in response to Karen's question, it looks like Ela, Carrie, and Lake Villa, they're also leaving voicemails for patrons if they don't pick up. At Algonquin, they're leaving a message, but putting the item to the side for a second notification, and then they're not checking out the item. I do want to speak to something Tori said. She mentioned auto-renew. So auto-renew is still enabled for all libraries. We never turned auto-renew off. We will be disabling auto-renew for 1 day, and that is Sunday, June 28th at this time. We currently have over 500,000 items that are due on Wednesday, July 1st. So we don't want to crash the system or get our notification system blocked as spam by our patrons' email servers. So we will be turning off auto-renew on Sunday, June 28th. That means that items that are due on July 1st will not be eligible to be auto-renewed. So keep that in mind for your patrons, that's the 1 day that will turn off auto-renew.
So
can I ask? Oh,
go ahead. Please, go ahead. No.
So I'm just wondering, I'm in Simply Reports right now and trying to create a list for all patrons that we're triggering right now. So we are doing our pick lists and roughly about 300 have been done. So I pulled a report of all those patrons who have email addresses. Is that something that we can use and then do a mass email to those patrons with we're using a reservation system as well at Evanston. So is that something that I'm finding that I can do in Simply Reports? I guess based upon patron barcode, email address, and expiration date of hold. Does that sound right that we're able to do that? Okay.
Yeah. And if you want to, send me an email after the session if you just kind of want me to look over the report setup. But we can definitely, because I know, yes, yeah, Anastasia says yes. I know Anastasia ran a report where she grabbed the patron emails and then she was able to upload those emails right to like Library Aware and send out that notice instead of contacting them individually. So
Okay, because
Yeah.
we're contacting those that were on the shelf now, but as we begin to trigger, we're pulling the ones again that we don't need to call because we've already called them once that have holds, but the future ones. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm seeing Laura from Algonquin has a point here about they don't check out items until the patron is at the drive-through window. One of the questions we did receive for the agenda was just kind of on like the pick list workflow, and it included like at what point are you checking items out to patrons? So is your library checking items out to patrons after you trap them, or are you waiting to notify the patron and then check out, or do you wait until the patron is actually at the library to pick up before you check it out? So really interested to see how your library manages that.
With Lake Forest, we're trying to not trap check out unless we can call, so that it's happening the same day we're calling them. So that it's not a bunch of stuff sitting there and it's 2 days before they get a call and they're already dead, because they're already losing to a degree 4 days if they wait that whole time, since we are checking them out. But like I said, we're going to be generous in renewing things if anything. A lot of people are getting books. We do have some with a lot of movies, but they're not going to be able to watch all 15. So they're probably going to return half of them, which will put them back into quarantine for another 10 days. So what we're trying to do, especially now that we're past the only holds we're getting now are ones people are placing in the last couple of days. So we're assuming they want them. So we are trying to not trap it or check it out if we don't think we can call them that day.
Got a lot of responses in chat, so let me just see if I can run through them. So it displays they plan to check out after they talk with the patron live. At ELA, they check out when they call the patron. Same at Carrie. Nina says they check out after notification. Amy says they've been checking out through July 1st, just to match up with the current CCS due date for the items during the close period. And they check out at the time that they call. Lisa at McHenry, they check out their items on the morning of the day of the appointment has been made. Barb says Lincolnwood checks out when the patron calls from the parking lot. Karen at Glenview, they check out when the patron arrives at the drive-up window. And there's definitely some libraries who have extended their due date periods. And Park Ridge traps right away and checks out the same day before their appointment.
Yeah, and I'd like to address a question from Connie in the chat. She's asking if items are checked out to July 1st, will those items be automatically renewed? And again, the answer to that is no. We do need to disable the auto renew job on June 28th, and that's the day that items due on July 1st would attempt to auto renew. Again, we simply have too many items that are due on that day to let that job run without potentially impacting the system. So libraries do not need to check items out moving forward until July 1st. July 1st is the date that we extended all items to during the stay-at-home order while our libraries were in phase 2 of the Restore Illinois plan. So moving forward, like Anastasia said, some libraries have extended their normal checkout periods to be longer than usual. I don't think anyone has shortened their loan periods. A couple libraries have opted to extend loan periods, and then other libraries are just checking out for their normal loan periods pre-COVID.
I have been bad and I have been deviating from this agenda here. So I want to make sure that we touch on some of these questions that we have not quite yet. For libraries who are doing curbside service, how many staff members do you have manning the curbside service? And have you found that number to be sufficient, or would you prefer to increase or decrease?
At Lake Forest, we're generally 2 people, because sometimes some people show up before the bag makes it out to the dock, so that somebody can run back and get it, because we need to keep someone by the materials. We can't leave them alone. So it's sort of a 2-person. I've also on days when we've had about 3 or 4 people in the building at a time working on curbside. There are people pulling and calling. But yeah, if you don't have a second person out there, I'd have somebody pop out and check on them every 15 minutes or so. Patrons ask questions. We try to direct them, but sometimes it's a whole question, so we can ask. But yeah, I find that you need another person out there just to be able to run back and forth if something comes up.
That's a good point. Nina mentions they are scheduling 3 at Cary, but they probably only need 2. Anastasia mentions that they have 4, so 2 for checking out and running, and 2 to trap and bag. And it sounds like that works well for them. They don't feel stressed. She even has time for a meeting and lunch. Let's see. Carrie says they're starting next week, but she's timing in anyway. They're using 3. So 2 checking out and pulling holds and checking items, 2 pulling holds and checking items out, 1 acting as a point person with patrons. No, I'm struggling here too, Carrie, don't worry. And then,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the main thing is we're having enough people to try to pull, call, bag. We're doing a smaller amount, so some people can do more than one thing. I'm just sort of basing the number of people, making sure that there's enough staff so that everybody can still do their breaks. So they have time to go wash their hands or change their mask or their gloves if they start to need to. So I like to have an extra body to be sure there's someone who can fill in if somebody had, at least through we're doing morning and afternoon teams. So there's a morning group that's in from 7 to 1, and they sort of check things in, prep things, and then the afternoon team is shooting it out the door. The morning team will pull a little and have things ready for us to call, and then we'll go from there. So I would just remind you that your staff's going to need more like little breaks to get a fresh mask or wash your hands get so sweaty if you're outside curbside with those gloves. It's nice to be able to put on a fresh pair. So yeah, we have sort of an extra body to be sure I've let someone go home a lot of times early if the list isn't too long and the staff's all had breaks. So I would remind you that they have extra things they have to take care of. And it takes longer to go to the bathroom because you got to de-glove, everything, and then come back out and redo it. So just a suggestion.
No, those are really good considerations. Just reading a few more chats here. Displays, they will have 1 person at the desk and 1 being a runner as needed. 1 person out walking the line to answer other questions and solve problems. Laura says they have 3 to 4 circulation staff plus 2 pages as runners to run items out to cars, plus 1 page to empty bins of returns. Once someone touches a return, they are dirty materials for the day. So they've got about 5 people per average, and that's a really good consideration. For libraries who are doing curbside, there was a question about what are your curbside hours, and if anyone wants to pop in their specific hours into the chat, please do. But just kind of generalizing this, do you find that your morning is more is your morning busier than your afternoon? What are the popular times that patrons seem to like doing curbside? Or have you not been able to pick up on a pattern yet? I suppose if it's just a week, we may not be able to tell what patrons like, what time of day patrons like.
We're only doing it 2 to 6 Monday through Saturday. So there's not we do tend to get, it's sort of spread out now, more like it was when it was in the building. There are a few who come in the earlier, but our time is so concise. it's not really a way to tell a pattern. I'm usually starting to pack up by 5:30 because it's so few through the door. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Park Ridge, sounds like Park Ridge has a good flow throughout the day. Des Plaines has a question. If anyone has or is considering senior hours.
Lake Forest is considering it for when people start coming back in. That we might have some senior hours specifically for them, but not to sound, a lot of people in Lake Forest are of an upper age, so we're not sure if we're gonna be able to separate it that way.
So this is interesting. Algonquin says they've got pickup before noon for walkers and bikes during the week. So separating out walk. Oh yeah, go ahead, Louise.
Is any library now doing delivery patrons who are shut-ins?
I'm just looking through the window at my traveling librarian now. She is looking at doing a drop-off pickup, like leave something on the porch for them. Our facilities won't even return our calls, so our senior facilities aren't even returning our phone calls, but for our individual homes, I'm actually watching her through my office window. She's gotten some things. We're actually doing, because we're doing this across all of our folks, we're doing these boxes. So we're like mailing out crafts for kids and all of these kinds of things. And we were lucky enough to be the recipient of a large grant from Rails for census stuff, because Zion is bad on the census, and they had planned to do a great big concert program in the park and all of this, and we had ordered all of these giveaways with census stuff on them, and we're now repurposing those, and one of those is one of those like string backpacks, and so she's loading in a book that they get to keep, a word find, a little plant that she got. It's so cute, you know, that you pour the water in and the little plant grows and all of this, and is going to be dropping that off on people's doorsteps who want to. She's talking to them on the phone, and we're also trying to get our things back that they may have.
Okay, thank you, because that's helpful, because that's what I've suggested also for our library.
And it looks like, based on the chat, a lot of other libraries are doing home delivery as well. Nina at Cary says that they are doing home delivery. Cary at Fox River Valley, they've been doing home delivery, I believe, since May. At Des Plaines, they're doing porch drop-off for individual home deliveries, and they started last week. And over at Huntley, they'll be starting home delivery in the next few days, and it'll be contactless. So staff will drop the items off at the door and then pick up any bagged materials that have been left out.
Thank you for the feedback.
Everyone is very busy.
For libraries using email notifications, how is it going? And do you think patrons would prefer a phone call, or are they okay with the email? Or is it too soon to tell? Park Ridge says they've had no issues using the emails.
We're using email if we can't, like voicemail box is full or anything like that. We are sending out an email response. We'll see. We've only had a week, so we're giving them a little more time to come pick them up. But they're getting a email notification regardless. If they have email at Lake Forest, if you have email notification, you will get the notification. It just includes, thanks to CCS, a little note saying we're going to call you first. And most people have picked up on it. We've had a few just show up, but that's when somebody runs in and grabs it for them if we can.
Cool.
Yeah, and as Tori mentioned, CCS can work with you, and we've worked with a number of libraries already to customize your hold notice text to include whatever information would be relevant and helpful to your patrons to receive in their hold notice. So Mako has been our hold notice modification expert over there and has helped many of you get your notices up and running with new language.
Carrie says they're hoping just to use standard hold notifications again. She plans on opening lots and lots of tickets this week.
We'll be ready for you, Carrie.
We did have a question on for the agenda on if there's any libraries offering curbside to patrons other than their own. I think at this time we only have 3 libraries that are offering curbside pickup to non-local patrons. For the other libraries, at this point, and I understand this is super new, there was a question if any libraries are planning to expand services to reciprocal patrons.
I think Evanston's willing to do that. We're just trying to first get through the current stuff, and then also just see what it looks like with just Evanston patrons.
Yeah, so Round Lake is one of the libraries offering pickup to all patrons. And then, oh, thanks, Tori. We've got some libraries saying not quite yet, maybe once returns are under control. So this may be a good question to kind of put a pin on, and then in our next meeting we can revisit and see, now that libraries have kind of been on pickup for a couple weeks or more, how they're anticipating their services to progress. So who are the 3 who are? I know it is Round Lake, Niles, and
Lake Villa?
I think Lake Villa. I think you're correct.
Lake Villa, tell me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it's
Yes, we are.
Cool, thanks, Jackie.
Good, I'm not telling lies.
They've got a question or a comment. So Fox River Valley says they'll be offering curbside to anyone who stops by. Home delivery is limited just to their card holders because yes, you would be doing a lot of driving. And then a question about if there's going to be a governing board question about opening curbside to RBPs.
Governing board decided that libraries, so we've suspended pickup anywhere, our pickup anywhere policy, so libraries can certainly allow RBPs to pick up holds at your location, but it's not required to allow RBPs and CCS, other CCS patrons not belonging to your library to pick up holds at your location. So it's a library by library decision.
Let's see. I'm apologize if I'm moving through these questions a little quickly. We're kind of down to our last half hour, and I make sure we touch on everything here. So this next one, agenda topic 3E, was a last minute addition. I thought it was a great question. Just asking how libraries are managing the pick list for curbside. So if anyone has particular workflows for picking, trapping, checking out, and scheduling curbside, because there's just so many different elements that go into it. Do you find your library kind of goes through the entire process at once? Do you pull everything and then maybe the next, the afternoon crew then traps and calls patrons or whatnot?
We have yet to start curbside at Evanston, but we've been calling all of our patrons. So right now they're probably on the M's, A to M they've done for all of our old holds. And then we have people doing the pick list. And then once those patrons are called, we'll then reshelve the new holds and see if that patron currently has an item on the hold shelf for them. So that means we've contacted them. And then whatever patrons we haven't, that don't have a new hold on the shelf, then those are people we'll either send an email to or voice call.
Interesting. Well, again, oh, I know someone was getting ready to pitch in there. Well, again, like these are probably really good questions for us to talk about at our next session too. So we'll put a pin on that one. Oh, Karen says Glenview is honoring all holds placed on Glenview items for any patrons as long as they are in their system. So there's another library. So moving on to the last section of the agenda. And this section is kind of questions that were more focused on working with patrons. So at the beginning of the session, we had some libraries pitch in about if they are requiring patrons to make appointments or if they're allowing pickups at the convenience. It sounds like it's kind of a half and half. Definitely libraries doing both. For libraries who are requiring appointments, are you using software? I know we had Park Ridge mention they're using LibCal Spaces. Is there any other software libraries have been using, or is your staff managing these appointments manually? Are you a paper and pen kind of system? So we've got a library using Communico, a couple libraries using Communico. And you guys like Communico? It works, been serving your needs pretty well?
I do know at least one or two other libraries are using Calendly.
Oh, there's a
St. Amanda said, yeah, Calendly.
Yeah, curious, for the libraries using Communico, how is it working out for you? Feel free to, if you don't mind chatting, or if you even want to unmute yourself.
Hopefully this silence me is good. Not bad.
Okay, looks like it's going well for Algonquin. That's good. Any staff member can use it. That's probably really helpful.
I like the fact that you were able to change the language in Communico to how you wanted it for your library. And I just looked, and we have 45 reservations for our first day for pickup. And we can take up to, I think it was 300. So we can do a lot with it. And then it gives a patron barcode number and you can just pull the holds.
That's nice. For the libraries who require appointments, how are you working with patrons that just show up? I know we heard from at least one library, I believe earlier, that said that they'll honor anyone who does show up, even if they don't have an appointment. Park Ridge will accommodate them as well. Anyone else? At Algonquin, they're taking, so they will accommodate them at Algonquin and ask them to make an appointment at in the future. Park Ridge will do the same. Ask them to make sure they get a confirmation email next time. Lincolnwood will try to do as much as possible, and so far so good. Anastasia made the point that for them, a lot of the people who just show up were people who thought they made an appointment but didn't complete the process. Displays will try to help any patron who shows up, but their staff can't go to another floor to check for an item, so they can only accommodate items that are already on the hold shelf. Algonquin does not take same-day appointments for pickup. And Round Lake will try to accommodate them. They will try to accommodate them also when they start. Do you have any issues with patrons who are not following the pickup procedure or using PPE?
At Lake Forest, they're pulling up in their cars. So some of them will have the PPE, they'll have a mask on, some won't. But we're not getting that close to the car. We're dropping it in the back seat or in the trunk, so we're generally not getting up close near the patron. But yeah, a lot of the ones that are in the cars do not, since they're in their car, they're not wearing them. But some of the patrons will put them back up, but we just keep our distance and we're gloved. And like I said, we're working off the back end of the car most of the time.
That's cool.
Carrie chimes in the chat saying so far so good with their patrons, so that's wonderful. Anastasia says that since their pickup is outside and staff don't really have contact, since the staff are going out every hour to put the holds on the tables, it doesn't particularly matter if they have PPE, but they do have markers so that the line is spaced 6 feet apart. Sounds like Parker, you've got it down over there. Oh, good. I'm glad your procedures are working out for you. So moving on a little bit, how are you handling registration patron registration requests? So I know we do have a number of libraries that are offering online registration. If your library is not offering online registration, are you registering patrons in any kind of way?
Well, we don't, this is Karen at Fremont, we don't have the online form, but what we're doing is if they don't have a card and they're contacting us through chat, or we have a contact us form. And so then that's how we're kind of emailing the patrons back or chatting with them and getting their information and getting them a card and giving them that card number over the chat or the through email. And then, you know, once we open up again, we let them know that their card is waiting for them here, but they can obviously use the e-resources. So probably don't have as many as like an online form of people signing up, but we've, you know, had a few.
Oh, that's good. That's great. We've got a lot of chats coming in. So Algonquin has virtual cards they can apply for online. Des Plaines has been doing online registration. Whew, they've got over 200 cards for patrons to come and pick up. Round Lake says they're using a link on their website and creating cards with 3-month expiration. Des Plaines is giving a Tempe card as well. It's good until September 30th. Carrie, they're issuing temporary online cards with the option of converting to a regular card if they email a photo of license or bills, and then they'll mail the card to the patron. Algonquin, the virtual card is verified and changed to a normal card at the window for pickup. Has anyone had patrons at, who have called the library asking for a curbside pickup that don't have a card? Are you just creating a brief temporary card for them, or Crystal Lake does apply, patrons can apply by email to Julie, the circ manager at Crystal Lake. Huntley has issued 120 temporary cards that will need to be verified by September 1st. That's awesome. You guys, there's it's pretty significant online registration that's been happening at the libraries. That's excellent.
You know what? I have a question about the online cards and the registration expirations and all that. The current patrons that are in the system and they're get set to expire, are they being extended or are through CCS Magic or are they just expiring? I couldn't remember.
We did extend patron expiration dates, and I'm going to need to triple check my email. Miyako, can you remember when we extended them to?
I want to say August 1st is sticking in my head, but I am not 100% sure on that.
Okay, and if we're not
It's
open,
nodding.
if we're not open to the public by that date of August 1st, is it possible to get them extended again through the CCS Magic?
Yeah,
it's been very
absolutely.
helpful not to have patrons contacting us. Hey, my card expired, and I really, it's just been really helpful. And I thought that's what I understood, that they were increased the expiration date.
Yeah, we can absolutely continue to extend library card expiration dates beyond July 1st. So governing board meets tomorrow. We can check in with them to make sure that that's something that's cool that we do. We can certainly extend them to August or even beyond that through September.
Oh, that would be so helpful, because if we don't open to the public, it'll make it easier.
And we can also work with your library individually too,
Okay.
if you want a different date than what is decided on system-wide.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, it will be definitely super, super helpful for all the patrons to have those cards extended. But it's, I'm sure, a very scary thought to think about, hey, when that expiration date hits, all those renewals. If there was a question that was submitted about libraries handling patron accounts that owe for damaged and missing materials. So how are libraries handling patron accounts that owe for damaged or missing materials but want to participate in curbside service? I don't know if any libraries have run into this yet.
At Lake Forest, so far we haven't hit anybody who's been blocked in any way. So we haven't really. I had one person who was blocked. They were applying for a Lake Forest temporary Lake Forest card, but they owed money at Highland Park. So I sent them back a note telling them I'd be happy to give them a temporary card once they cleaned up at Highland Park, and they did within a day. So they came back and said I cleared it out, and I went and checked, and they had. So, but so far we just have not had anybody who's placed a hold to pick up curbside. Depending on what we did. Oh no, I lied. There was one person. They're missing a part. And they have it, and we were going to charge them $5 for the part. I went ahead and overrode and put the bag out for her and checked out to her. So we were able to override. I just told her we're going to need the piece or the money when we're open again. So that's the only one we've had. So I haven't had enough experience. At this point, since we've gotten through all our holds, somebody's blocked, I'm not going to override that block unless if it's a really big one. If it's smaller, I might be willing to, but most people have been able to go in and pay online, so they can take care of it.
And Julie in the chat notes that patrons can still pay online via Power Pact for lost or damaged items. Carrie and Algonquin, patrons still have to pay first if their card is blocked before checking out materials. Displays is doing a lot of work wiping out lost item fees for their patrons. So that's really great service during this time. Molly said at Zion, if they hit the block threshold, they'll still be blocked there. Maggie at Brown Lake, they're being very nice and waiving fees when they're able to. So I'm sure your patrons appreciate that for sure. Karen, at Glenview, they're asking patrons to pay fees and fines online, place their holds, and then pick up at the drive-up window. At Park Ridge, they've been very flexible. They'll check in bills and recheck out and waive fees and make exceptions as needed.
I'm glad patrons are using the Power Pack to make payments. So it makes it so much easier than having to handle cash or handle a credit card. We did get a question asking if anyone is offering payment options other than online through the pack. Will your library still accept a cash payment or a credit card payment? Or I don't know what other forms there are. Venmo, I don't know. Sounds like Carrie's accepted checks. Des Plaines will not accept any cash or checks, so they will be asking people to pay online and override the block as necessary. Algonquin is doing online only. Glenview says they will accept a check. Okay. So thanks for that input. Fox River Valley has been fortunate. Not too many lost or damaged items. I think they've had 2 online payments at the beginning of April. No checks or cash will be accepted at their location. Have any libraries resumed taking OCLC requests? No. No's from a number of libraries, and we get a yes from Glenview.
I don't know that it makes sense to do OCLC before the Rails delivery resumes for academic libraries, because we get a lot of requests for textbooks and that type of thing, and we don't have the delivery service, and so that probably will be delayed for a while.
It's a good point, Paula. I'm just kind of going through, we've got a flurry of chats coming through here too. Just kind of before I go on to a different question, just on the OCLC, Evanston mentions they've never stopped taking requests, but are not filling the holds yet. Fox River Valley says they're not taking requests quite yet. They're just sending back what they can. Des Plaines is taking and filling the request for eventually delivery, they hope. And Glenview is currently mailing items. So not going through Rails, but mailing the items. A question came in for libraries that are accepting returns. Are you contacting patrons for damaged returns or just sending them to repair?
I guess it depends upon what the damage is. We had, our book drops were closed at Evanston and people shoved books still in there. And when we went this week to look at that, they were wet and molded. So we contacted those patrons because it says specifically no returns, don't locked up and everything. And we just contacted them, tell us what happened, you know, different scenarios to listen to them. But most of the patrons apologized and have paid for those.
At Lake Forest, as we've started doing some of the quarantine items, there were some things that had items sitting on them. So they've ended up with an odd shape just due to the fact that there was the additional 10 days of pressure. So we're not planning on charging anybody. We're going to be fairly generous with damage unless it looks like they tried something unusual to clean it. We're putting a note in with the bags that go out that asks the patrons to, letting them know we've quarantined these items for a long period of time and to avoid excessive cleaning. But yeah, we tend on we've had a couple books that are a little bent or pages that may be a while before they ended up in bad shape. So those we're just going to write off.
Fox River Valley says they're being pretty lenient with any incoming damage. So far, they have not seen anything to the extent that Kim mentioned. Sounds like they've seen kind of what Tori and Lake Forest has seen. Most books are just kind of slightly squished. Laura says they haven't had any extensive damage either. Their quarantined items are shelved to prevent damage. Ela says they'll tell us next week after quarantine. And Glenview also says they're planning on being very forgiving of damage returns. So this is interesting. We have about 5 to 7 minutes left. If there are any questions that we haven't touched on that you have and would like to discuss, just leave a few minutes at the end for that. So please go ahead and ask. Go ahead and ask now.
I have a question. I was just kind of wondering, because I was in another meeting, maybe you already discussed. I was just kind of wondering what kind of packaging and bagging people are doing when they do put things out. Are you using paper? Or are you using, the bags you have? Just how are you wrapping the books, or if you are at all, and just how you're doing it?
Looks like we have a couple replies in the chat. Over at Morton Grove, they're planning on using brown paper bags, and the same at Cary, they're using paper bags with handles. At Algonquin, they're using biodegradable plastic bags. Lake Villa, brown paper bags as well. Same at Round Lake. At Zion, they received some retail type plastic bags that have the logo on them. That's pretty fancy. And Fox River Valley, they're using plastic bag as well. Park Ridge, brown paper bags. Crystal Lake, and Displays as well, eco plastic bags with their logo.
Yeah, we're using a lot of those ourselves, the eco bags. We've also ordered a bunch of the brown paper bags, the small and large size. They don't hold as much as they look like they can. But yeah, so I was just wondering if somebody had found other things that might work best. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, and Jackie brings up a good marketing tip here. They staple the bag with the summer reading info.
Yeah, we're putting a handout inside that has all sorts of curbside questions and a coloring sheet on the back and directing them back to the website. So hopefully they'll look.
Very nice. Update from Displays. Their bags are like a grocery bag size, not much sturdier. So they're also adding summer reading club, census info, stuff like that. Molly Zion says that they are limiting people to 10 items right now. They're doing inserts around census and summer reading. Yeah, get that census info out. I love it.
I had a question for everybody that's a little off, not with the bags, but are you guys all getting a lot of patrons that want to donate books since they've been cleaning out their houses for 3 months? We're, of course, refusing donations right now. I was just curious how y'all are handling it at the other libraries.
There's a lot of yeses that are coming through the chat. So Parker says, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, we had a big pile on our front steps when we were closed, and they had wrapped them all in plastic and everything, and yeah, they all went into recycling.
Yeah, it sounds like Des Plaines is doing the same thing. They're getting rid of what's dropped off. A number of other libraries saying they get that question on the daily, and just telling patrons no. Fox River Valley has a thrift shop near them that's accepting donations. And she's been redirecting patrons there if they just want to get rid of items. Glenview's doing the same as Des Plaines. Another library is doing recycling. Yeah, Round Lake, no donations until further notice. If they receive, they'll go right into recycling. It's probably one of those things where no matter what kind of messaging you put up to patrons, they're just going to leave it right on your doorstep.
They all think they're treasures.
And yet they want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So we're doing the same thing. We're just telling people that they can't come in to work on them, and so consequently anything non-library oriented is being thrown out.
And then I just had one other question that's also unrelated to that. So we have gotten some requests for things like, because our computer lab is obviously closed, printing things like tax forms and stuff. And we're gonna kind of try to do that with our curbside pickup when we open it next week. So like we'll be, putting tax forms and stuff like that into, like, I guess maybe manila envelopes, we're thinking, with the patron name on it. Is anybody else doing anything similar, or does anybody else have requests like that, since a lot of people don't have printers anymore, it seems like?
There we go. Yeah, Glenview is also letting patrons pick up tax forms at the drive-up window. Signs not asking staff to handle personal sensitive information. Des Plaines will print any documents sent to them wirelessly. Fox River Valley believes they'll be offering curbside service, but that is TBD. And Lincolnwood says yes, tax forms and other printouts are provided, but they need to make the appointment. But yeah, Amanda, you are so right. Like, so many people just don't have printers anymore.
Yeah, I had to get one when we closed because I didn't have one,
Yeah, Molly says she brought one for quarantine too.
Yeah, I got a new TV and a printer. That's what I got.
Squared away there, Amanda.
Des Plaines says they see a lot of printers arriving in the condo building lobby. A lot of people are in the same boat, looks like. That's a good. Those are good questions. Thanks, guys. So with that, we are actually a minute past our end time period. Let me just stop sharing my screen here. So again, thanks for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedules to sit and converse with your colleagues. We are going to, as always, this will be, recording will be sent out. It will include the chat. So we won't lose any responses that we had there. So we'll share that in it should be in the CCS e-news this Friday. So if any of your coworkers were not able to attend or you wanted to review anything that we talked about, it will be available. So it's good seeing everyone.
Hi guys.
Everybody for coming. Thanks.
So good to see everyone.
Bye.